welcome you to Minneapolis, Minnesota for a showdown in the Midwest Division. The Minnesota Wind Chill are going to be hosting the Madison Radicals here on some Friday Night Ultimate on ESPN. The AUDL is bringing you the weekly showcase game here on ESPN3, and I'm here alongside with Megan Tormey. I'm Chuck Kindred. And Megan, can you tell us a little bit about some of the new players that we're going to see on Minnesota this year?
Well, let's take a look at the rosters. Let's see everything that the Minnesota Wind Chill has to offer. There are a couple of players who I think we should highlight and talk about. We're going to see some great things from them today. On the Minnesota Wind Chill, number 17, James Ron, has already done great work in the 2 games that Minnesota has played so far. He has pulled in 7 goals and has thrown 5 himself. So then on number 1, Kevin Sealer, he has thrown 10 assists and caught 6 goals himself. So we've got a couple of very strong offensive players on the Minnesota Wind Chill. And we are seeing right now on the field the Minnesota Wind Chill being introduced to their home crowd. This is the Minnesota home opener. While we finish up the player introduction, let's take a look at the Madison Radicals. There are a couple of players to highlight there.
Yeah, it looks like the Minnesota Wind Chill have a little bit of turnover. We're seeing some new faces, definitely some experienced club players coming into the mix. And it should be interesting to see how they develop some chemistry. You know, a lot of these guys have never played together. They've played at a high level, but not on the same teams.
About 50% of the Minnesota Wind Chill comes from the mixed national championship Dragon Thrust, and about the other half come from the elite men's team in Minnesota, the Sub-Zero. There's a smattering, a few other individuals, most notably some players from the Chad Larson experience, which is also an elite mixed team that comes from Iowa, but the players are traveling to Minnesota to play with the Minnesota Wind Chill.
Wow, so a big commitment to travel all the way from Iowa for these games. Megan, how does it compare a guy coming from the co-ed division to play with guys who are in the men's division? Is there a speed difference?
Very interesting. Lou Abramowski, the head coach of the Minnesota Wind Chill, said that it's taken a little bit of adjustment from the co-ed players who are now playing on the Minnesota Wind Chill. They have different targets that they're now hitting. They're used to hitting women of different statures, and so now they have taller targets who are capable of different things. So they're just getting adjusted to, of course, playing with each other and also playing in a men's team.
Yeah, very interesting adjustment. How about the Madison Radicals this year? They've added a couple new faces, is that correct?
They have indeed, and one person I'd like to highlight in particular is number 26, Peter Graffey. He is a 23-year-old, and he has already made 11 Ds for the Madison Radicals in the 3 games that he has played, which I think is a fairly decisive number to have at both such a young age and such an early stage in the season. If that wasn't enough, he has also scored 5 goals and thrown 7 of them. So he's shaping up to be a great player, both offensively and defensively. I'm guessing that we're going to see quite a bit of field sense from him, given that he's able to both get the Ds and then get the disc where it needs to be. Talking about one of the Madison Radicals' great returners, number 7, Tom Annan. He has thrown 12 goals for the Madison Radicals. Last year, he and Kevin Brown were 2 of the very driving forces with the Madison Radicals, and it looks like he's starting to do the exact same thing this year. And we are going to pause right now for the singing of the national anthem.
Keep that round of applause going for Emily. That was beautiful. All right, everybody, let's gear up. We'll start the game here in just a couple minutes. Thank you for coming and keep coming on in.
And we are getting ready to get going here in St. Paul. We're in the Twin Cities, and we're going to take a look at the standings right now. We're in week 3, and let's take a look at where some of these teams are at. We see the Toronto Rush are still undefeated in their second season without a loss. They're 3-0. And then in the Midwest Division, which is where we are tonight, we've got the Madison Radicals still undefeated. And Megan, I heard that they had some close games, even though they're undefeated. Did you hear that as well?
I think there have been quite a few surprising close games, both on the part of the Madison Radicals as well as the Toronto Rush, simply because it's the beginning of the season, starting to gel again. But being able to pull out a decisive victory, I think we're going to see that the Madison Radicals are perhaps going to continue their domination of the Midwest Division this year.
Yeah, especially with the Wildfire coming out a little stale at the beginning of the year. I think some of the guys on that team expected to come out and roll, and they took it on the chin in that first week, didn't they?
They had 2 really tough away games. They played a very tight game against the Cincinnati Revolution, losing only by 1 point. The next day, they matched up against the Indianapolis Alley Cats and lost by 7 points. It's always hard to be on the road for that second day, but it is very surprising to everyone who was watching the AUDL last year that the Chicago Wildfire were not able to hold it closer to the Indianapolis Alley Cats that day.
Absolutely, and of course we've got our new division, the West Division. Our first showcase game was seeing San Jose against San Francisco, and that looks to be a rival that's going to have some serious legs as the season wears on.
Absolutely. I am very excited for the addition of the West Coast Division, and I think that they've already shown that there's a lot of firepower on that team. We are going to see some nice, tight, exciting games all throughout the year from that end of the country.
Very good. So 3 divisions, 1 league, 1 mission, and that is to bring great high-level professional ultimate to all of our viewers at home. And we are excited to get going here in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Let's get an applause going here. It's the very first pull of the home opener for your Minnesota Wind Chill.
And our game is under the way. The first pull is a roller fielded by Nate Volkman. And a nice diving catch there by number 10. And it looks like good defensive pressure so far by the Wind Chill. And Megan, are the Wind Chill a pretty athletic team? And look at that, right as we say it, a big layout D on an underneath cut.
They are indeed a very athletic team. They have a good mix of seasoned veterans as well as young athletic players, and I think it's worth mentioning again that Minnesota as a whole finished incredibly well at the USAU National Championships last year, most notably with Dragon Thrust taking home the gold. So we are going to see a lot of athletic play from these guys.
And just like that, a D on a little careless underneath cut. So tit for tat, these two teams have come out with some defensive pressure. That layout D from the Wind Chill was by Jay Drescher, number 10. Really nice low break there by Andrew Brown, one of the veterans on this team. And speaking of veterans, a deep shot by Nate Volkman, and another D. That's 2 Ds on the first point for Jay Drescher. And it looks like another miscue. So a lot of turnovers so far, Megan.
And that is what I think has plagued the Minnesota wind chill so far this year. Clearly a very deep and talented roster, but they are still just getting to know one another. Number 10, Jay Drescher, with that turnover there, that is well within his realm of capacity in terms of being able to throw that disc, but not knowing exactly what cut your cutter is communicating makes it very difficult to make very easy throws and catches.
That's right. Tom Annan gets on the board early with an up-the-line cut for the goal. Tom Annan is one of their main handlers, is he not?
As I mentioned earlier, he and Kevin Brown were, he and Andrew Brown were two of the prominent dictating offensive individuals for the Madison Radicals. And that is the miscommunication between Jay Drescher and, was that number 16, Brian Schoenrock?
Looked like Dave Schleicher might have gotten a piece of that. Good heads-up play if so. Minnesota wind chill now will have a chance to get back on the board here. And they're working down the open side. That's number 17 with the disc, James Hron. Throws the up line. Wind and deliver the big lefty backhand, and that will be a goal for the wind chill to number 88, Pat Jensen.
Taco Jensen! Put it up.
The Minnesota wind chill had a bye last week, so they were able to spend some time practicing, hammering out a few of the communication issues. That looked good, clean, and classy from the Minnesota wind chill, that point just there.
Hey dancers, let's wake it up a little bit.
I know in week one we saw the San Francisco Flamethrowers in a similar situation with players coming from the co-ed division and also from the open division. A new combination, particularly on offense. Megan, how hard is it to get that chemistry so that you're not turning the disc against these great defenses?
Chemistry in general is such an intangible element of a team. It's very hard to determine when you throw a mix of new players together, who will gel and who will have difficulty gelling. This early in the season, it's extremely difficult to tell how exactly things are going to shake out for the Minnesota wind chill.
Absolutely, and we see some good pressure around the disc from Minnesota. Andrew Brown with a nice low inside backhand. That seems to be his go-to throw so far. And again with the step around. Tom Annan, number 7, unable to handle it. It sure looks like Andrew Brown's looking to break with that backhand. So Minnesota will take over. A nice lefty flick around and a shot out to space. Number 4 in the area. Makes a great play, finds position and pulls it in for the goal. That is number 4, Ben Yacht. Welcome to the Yacht Club, says the PA announcer.
That is very surprising to see Scott Riggles not able to pull down the D. Just a slight misread. I don't know if maybe the sun had something to do with it. Not to take anything away from Ben Yacht's ability to read and catch the disc, but Riggles at 6'7", it's a pretty formidable defender to have on you. Though Ben Yacht, quite a tall guy himself.
Yeah, we've got some tall trees running around here in the Midwest. We've got Matt Weber, Scott Riggles, a couple big fellas. Some corn-fed Midwest Ultimate players here in St. Paul today. So Minneapolis on the board. Minnesota, rather. And here's the pull. It looks like the wind is pushing to the left. Is that why the pull is kind of dying on that on the tail end?
I believe so. It's pretty gaugeable wind. Nothing too squirrely for these seasoned Ultimate players, but it is going to put some definitive shape on the disc.
And Thomas Coolidge gets away deep, and a nice quick goal for Madison.
You'll notice that the Minnesota wind chill are particularly good at playing bothersome handler D, which is why I think the Madison Radicals are having to look twice downfield. That throw in particular was able to get off fast enough that the Minnesota wind chill couldn't quite set up defense both on the handler and downfield.
That was Kelson Alexander with a little step around flick huck. Very effective throw for Alexander, catching
Hey,
Coolidge.
Madison with the pull.
Open
Here
deep.
we go. Wind chills coming down on offense. Downwind. Let's give them a round of applause. Here we go.
So an interesting looking D for Madison. What are they running here, Megan?
It looks like a slight adjustment on their classic two-person cups. It looks like it's definitely a zone, but they've pulled in a couple other players.
Lots of pressure around the disc. Hammer goes up, and it is caught with contact. A nice strike to the end zone by number 14. Austin Lean with the throw.
All right, everybody, come on.
Take a look at that zone again. You see, last year, the two-person cup came to define the Madison Radicals. It was very difficult for teams to match up against. It looks as though they're playing a more classic cup with two people pulled back a bit. There it is again.
I know, come on, parents. I know, come on, you actually got nice weather today.
That was Kevin Sealer to James Saran.
I know, follow me.
And the crowd here in St. Paul starting to get into it.
Yeah, do something, get excited.
And a very nice day today in St. Paul. What is the weather report for our game today, Megan?
It's 62 degrees and very sunny today, which I was pleased to find out given on our way to Montreal last week we landed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and there was snow on the ground. So I'm glad they cleaned it up for today's game.
And a big bid downfield. Scott Riggles able to make the catch and delivers a deep shot. And it is caught. Madison taking a shot at the end zone, and they will score. So nice offensive flow for Madison. They look pretty confident with the disc.
I guess we'll give them a clap.
You were asking earlier about team chemistry, and I think the Madison Radicals are an exemplary team in terms of chemistry gone right. They are a group of guys who have played together through various forms. There are a lot of Madison Club and former Madison Club players on the team. But in general, they're just a group of guys who have a lot of fun together, and that's very evident with the ease with which they flow in games.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, they look like they're very confident. This is the team that was in the finals last year representing the Midwest Division. Do you think they're carrying a little bit of swagger into this season, Megan?
Without a doubt. They felt they had what it took to beat the Toronto Rush. Just they blamed some poor calling of lines for their defeat against the Toronto Rush. So I think knowing that they have what it takes to get so far in the season and having so little turnover, there are 21 returners on the Madison Radicals this year. That's a huge number coming back. With such good continuity, it's no surprise they feel confident about this season.
Absolutely, and Madison is a pretty tight-knit ultimate community as well. Very active and a lot of different opportunities to get out and play. And we are seeing a lot of pressure around the disc. Number 7 looking for an option downfield. And remember, you only have a few seconds to throw here in the AUDL. A little bit different than the 10 seconds that most of these guys are used to in the club scene. And a huge bid on that underneath throw. Handled easily, however, by number 45, John Starren. And knocking on the door, the Wind Chill are looking to punch this one in. We'll see if the defense can hold. And that throw just got a little bit out of reach for number 17, James Saran. James Saran has been very active so far. I think he's been in the end zone already. He just seems like a big presence on the field.
Stomp your feet. Stomp. Come on, stomp your feet. Stomp. 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 Are you stomping? I couldn't even hear over here.
And a nifty little throw and go there.
And we have our first
Looks like a foul call, 10-yard penalty.
Danny Neeson for cheating.
And the disc comes right back in. And a big backhand winds and delivers. Looks like the defender either got a piece or did that just get away from him?
Maybe at the end of the play we can take another look at it. It did look like it came off just a little odd.
Yeah, very flat angle. So Minnesota gets the disc with a chance to score to take the lead. And Kevin Sealer steps back and throws, and it gets away, and Mike Swain with the Callahan goal steals it for the Madison Radicals.
It's called a Callahan. That is when the defender catches a pass from the offense in the goal they want to score on.
So you've probably been in games where there's been a Callahan goal making. How much is that a momentum swing when you're out there trying to score the disc and then you turn it for a goal?
Well, having caught a Callahan goal myself, Chuck, and then we went on to win that game, I can say it can be a huge momentum shift.
Not to toot your own horn.
But I believe that was Mike Swain who got the goal.
You asked the question, Chuck. Just bringing you the facts.
I set him up, you knock him down. So Madison takes the lead 4-3. We've got 4 minutes, 54 seconds left here in our first quarter. This is the AUDL on ESPN3. And it looks like Madison, the defending Midwest Division champs, are looking to make a statement here in the first quarter.
There was that Callahan again by number 27, Mike Swain.
And we had our first heckle of the game. It's an old one called a not a puller. You know, that was first brought up in the 80s.
And the PA announcer here in St. Paul having some fun with the crowd right now.
Good effort. But that's a brick.
So Minnesota is going to tap the disc in here. Looks like there's two guys on the disc, so this might be another one of these zones for Madison. How effective is the Madison zone?
Last year, it was incredibly troublesome for other teams, in particular, or most notably the Chicago Wildfire, who ended up losing to the Madison Radicals in the game to go to the championship game. They, I would say, more than a lot of other teams, have adapted incredibly well to the AUDL field as well as the AUDL rules, and they jumped on the opportunity to use the double team to their favor.
And a nice play there by number 2, lays out for the D. That's Andrew Meshnick in the right place at the right time.
And there's a foul. Right.
A foul called there. Number 13 thought he had the D. That's Josh Hemish. But it will be a 10-yard penalty. The disc will come back in for Madison. And immediate deep shot. Very nice placement there. That's number 2, Andrew Meshnick, getting the disc and throwing to the end zone. And that will be another goal for Madison.
So Pat Schreiwise stealing the goal away from our bearded giant, Matt Weber.
Everybody, we need to help them out here. Make a little noise. Support our team.
I'll bet the bearded giant didn't mind, though. Same team. You mentioned last year that the zone helped Madison move ahead in the rankings, get all the way to the final. Is there anything about the width of this field that makes it more effective, less effective in your opinion?
Not so much the width of the field, but rather their ability to clamp on at the sideline. If you have a player who's not confident with over-the-top throws and gets trapped on the sideline against the Madison Radicals double team, there's going to be trouble. I think they were just highly effective in getting used to running the length of the field to put on that trap.
John Stern picking up the disc. Oh, awesome win.
And centering the disc to number 7, that's Dan Meeson. Downfield to Heron. And that throw gets away. So Madison will take over here. They've got good field position. And it looks like Minnesota is scrambling a little bit here. And Andrew Brown lets one go to the end zone. Haran in pursuit will make the D out the back. Nice play there by Haran. Looked like he saw that all the way.
Somebody get him a plaid shirt. We need a plaid shirt on his back.
So Minnesota will take over. They are trailing by 2 as we get towards the end of the first quarter here in St. Paul. And the shot goes up deep. Looks like the sun is an issue, and a nice play again by Haran. He seems to be so stable in the air, making play after play here. Nice catch there by number 14, and he will throw the goal. That's Austin Lean throwing to James Haran, and Haran is having a heck of a first quarter.
Haran is incredibly good at reading the disc, and he does it well both offensively and defensively, and that says something about not only a person's athleticism, but also their ability to get in, dig in during a game. When you know the disc is coming to you and you're a good reader, you're going to come down with the disc. But when you're on defense and you still get aggressive and go in and use your reading abilities to pull down the disc, that's the player you want on your team.
Looked like a nice bid there by Daniel Rowan. Kind of made the best of a bad situation, but to no avail. James Haran, yeah, just seems to make it look very easy. In the right place, in the right position, under control. Great first quarter so far. So here's our pull from Minnesota. And they are looking to break here to get back to 5-all. Let's see what Madison has to say about that. And a shot over the top there. Andrew Brown in pursuit will get D'd by number 4. That's Ben Yacht, once again in the middle of it. And Minnesota with some quick movement, quick passes, and a big layout catch underneath by Brian Schoenrock.
And we have a foul call here.
And foul is called, so I believe the disc comes back.
Got caught cheating. Your mama's going to be mad at you there.
And he will assess a 10-yard penalty. So no continuation on the foul. Comes back, he assesses the 10-yard penalty. He'll be right outside the goal line here. And a nifty inside break for the goal.
Kyle KG, little ticket Gill. Did you know?
It's a nice inside throw. You'll notice if we can watch that play again. Nate Volkman tries to flash into the lane, preventing the in cut. That was just enough space.
So here we see that first catch.
It's a great throw. It was number 93, Kyle Gill, with a catch there. He is new to the Minnesota Wind Chill this year. He's played for Sub-Zero, the men's team from Minnesota, as well as the Chad Larson experience, which is that mixed team I was talking about earlier. He is 5'9", 205 pounds. Oh, I'm sorry, 6'1", 170 pounds. Quite a player.
I wonder if they inflate their weights like they do in other sports. Seems less likely. So we're getting near the end here, about a minute left. Madison so far handling this defensive pressure. And Dave Wiseman with the disc in the middle of the field. So a foul called. Wiseman will get 10 yards, and the disc will come back in. And a look deep. And a heck of a play up high by number 13. That's Brian Hart coming down with the goal.
Hey, you scored. Turn around. What number are you?
Something interesting about the Madison Radicals, as we talked about their double team, they spent a lot of time last year developing that double team, developing their defense. Offensively, they just let it flow a little more organically. There's that nice forehand throw and the catch by Brian Hart. So as I mentioned earlier, Tom Annan and Andrew Brown had a lot of autonomy in developing their offensive strategy or just their look offensively. Now that they have a very dependable defense, they're looking to develop a few more offensive looks this year. So we'll see some interesting stacks from the Madison Radicals.
And away we go.
So it looks like another one of these zony looks for Madison. And Minnesota doing the tightrope over on this near sideline, looking to swing it, and they do. Wow, very tight margins. They get it through the cup, through the outstretched hands of a couple Madison Radicals and into the end zone. So a nice play there by Minnesota.
And that all started with that wide across field throw by the Minnesota wind chill. If you want to beat the Madison Radicals double team or their zone, that's what you have to do. Stretch them wide, make them sprint, and then hopefully catch them off guard.
Boom, boom, clap. Make some noise, do something. Somebody over there, lead some cheers.
So a little bit of an overthrow, but still Dan Meeson comes down with it. Then he's a bit of ahead of the curve of the Madison Radicals, which gives them just enough space to work it through and into the end zone.
So we're getting ready for our last pull here. 20 seconds left. It's all tied at 6. This has been everything we'd hoped it would be so far. And Minnesota looks a lot sharper.
They certainly do, and I think for those who are watching the Minnesota wind chill coalesce over the offseason, this is exactly the team I thought they would be.
So here we see Andrew Brown and Tom Annan working. And Brown winds and delivers a backhand. And Scott Riggles looks like he may have made the catch.
And go back to goal.
And he was in the end zone, so a great play by Scott Riggles to score the goal with time expiring.
With point, what is that, 21 seconds left? Well, I guess that's a goal.
This is shaping up to be a very interesting matchup, Riggles versus Yacht, the battle of the Giants. Can't wait to see more of those two go up in the air together.
Artemis, who is the goddess of the hunt. That is a true fact. That is a true fact. He also lives
so Scott Riggles goes up and somehow manages to keep possession of the disc.
Right, animal?
And Madison pulls ahead by 1 here. Looks like we might have some time back on the clock.
So this is something that's interesting about the AUDL. We're all getting used to having to follow the clock. And there, I think, was a miscommunication as to when time stopped exactly. So we have 2 seconds left on the clock, 5 seconds left on the clock. So we'll see what can happen in such short period of time.
Yeah, not a lot you can do in 5 seconds, although the clock does not start until, is it the first throw?
The first throw.
The first throw. So you do have time to make one pass and then wind and deliver to the end zone. And we saw the San Jose Spiders score a goal at the end of the quarter against San Francisco. It was exactly this situation. And a point block. That's a live disc. And could it be that Madison has scored?
No.
No goal. So it looks like it was not in time. A valiant effort by Madison, however. And a nice point block as well. So it looks like Madison is going to roll into our first break with a 1-point lead.
Come on, everybody, get up and give them a round of applause. The quarter ended with Madison up 7-6. A hard-fought quarter. Give them a round of applause here. and we'll take a quick break, and we'll get back into the action shortly. So grab some snacks or food from the concessions. Check out the merchandise. The jerseys this year are awesome. They are phenomenal. Go check them out. Kids, beg your parents. I know you like the merch. Come on, parents. Come on now. That's not that bad.
Coming down the ice. He's coming around the net. Centering pass. Oh, look at this. A break for Canada. He shoots. He scores. Canada wins in overtime. Canada back on top of the world.
The highlights from the first quarter, taking a look again, realizing why the score is as nice and tight as it is.
Maybe if you're a teenager or a teenage mutant ninja turtle, either way.
The Minnesota wind chill, as I mentioned earlier, have had a little trouble with communication. They seem to be doing a bit better tightening down. There's that Callahan by Mike Swain, but a few errors are being absolutely capitalized on by the Madison Radicals.
We're about to start the second quarter. Out on the line, we've got
There's Ben Yacht in the air again.
Austin Lean, got John Starin, Danny Neeson. Who is that over there? Is that Dan Miller? Pat Jensen, and Kevin Sealer.
And that was the last score of the first quarter. Riggles catching it in the end zone over the equally as tall Ben Yacht. And that point is why it's so important to be heads up now that we have a clock.
Yeah, the end of the quarter is kind of a dicey period. Makes coaching a little harder, makes strategy a little more important.
Exactly right, and you have to be absolutely certain that the time has run out of the clock. Had there been a second left on the clock, the Madison Radicals would be up one more.
And Minnesota right back into the fire here. Good defensive pressure by Madison as the shadows are getting longer and we move into nighttime. Friday Night Ultimate in St. Paul, Minnesota. Wow, and a big bit on the up line, but it is caught by Minnesota. So great poise so far from the home team.
Yeah, you notice that the Minnesota wind chill every now and then set up a little bit of a handler weave, which is what they're doing right now, especially between two of their primary handlers, Austin Lean and John Starin. Those two are incredibly comfortable with the disc, and I think that comfort is recognized by the Madison Radicals, which is why we're seeing them wait until they get closer to the end zone to put on those double teams, because if anyone can just rip through it, it's John Starin and Austin Lean.
And James Hron once again going up and making it look easy for the goal.
I think I've lost count. Is that Hron's third goal this game?
I think it's 1,000, but yes, 3 could be it. Really fun to watch these Minnesota handlers. We got Kevin Sealer, who's a veteran, very comfortable with the disc, likes throwing the upside downs, and then our two folks that you mentioned, Austin Lean, and who was their
Number
other?
45, John Starin.
John Starin, yeah, so steady with the disc, and they seem to be the core that these guys seem to key off on offense.
Yeah, John Starin is one of the individuals from Iowa Played for Chad Larson experience. He's 30 years old, and I think his veteran moves make themselves very apparent on the field. In every game I've watched him play, he is incredibly calm, always catches the disc, always moves it to the right place.
And Chad Larson experience is one of those constantly overperforming co-ed teams where you don't know, not a lot of star power on those rosters, but they almost always make it to nationals, and when they make it, they always go deep in the co-ed division, and they've been to Worlds, they've been to, I'm not sure if they've won nationals or not, but they're always in the mix, and it's incredible.
And
very
have
tough
been
beat.
for a very long time.
That's right. So Nate Volkman trying to draw some contact, and a big layout D by Minnesota. Looks like there's a call, however, but a nice bid by number 21. That was Eric Johnson, EJ.
And it looks like there was contact before Nate Volkman's throw, which is why the disc goes back to him.
And EJ, an exciting young prospect out of Luther. His teammates speak very highly of his ability, and he's still so young, still very up and coming. Great bid by him, and he's going to pick up the disc here. And a nice over-the-top throw, handled easily by number 93, Kyle Gill. And here we see the double team from Minnesota. The scuba over the top beats it easily. And a hammer to the far side of the field. What a throw, and that'll be a goal. So Yacht back on the board and a great hammer across the field. And Megan, we don't see a lot of cross-field hammers. I sort of expected we'd see more with the larger, wider field in the AUDL.
Well, when you see a Ben Yacht all alone in the back corner of the end zone, it's a pretty safe throw.
And here's EJ dialing it in. I don't think Madison had any idea he was over there.
That does not bode well when someone on offense does not have to move an inch in the end zone to catch the disc.
I guess you're right.
That's a great hammer, though. We have to give credit to that, too. That's pretty hard to guard against.
Absolutely. So Madison with some action downfield here, looking to strike deep, certainly. And almost mishandled, but number 8 is able to pull it in. That's Adam Drews. And almost able to do it again. Wiseman didn't quite leave him enough space, I think, on that up line.
We've watched the Madison Radicals a number of times, and I feel like this is the first time I've seen them rattled at all.
And the shot to the end zone for Minnesota. And mishandled.
Madison will be picking up the Frisbee disc in the back of the end zone, bringing it forward to the front of the line.
And I believe that was Peterson in the end zone. Number 23, we see he goes up with the left hand and just unable to wrangle it in there. Unfortunate for him. So Madison gets a second chance. Let's see if they can punch it in. And a big shot out to space. Defender is in the area, but number 13 is able to go up and rip it down. That's Brian Hart. He's having a heck of a game. And Swain throws it up the line and in on the continuation to Pat Schreiwise for the goal.
Plays like that really help highlight the level of comfort that the Madison Radicals have with one another. You notice there were a couple of quick, almost no-look passes to the teammates. On a team less comfortable or less knowledgeable with one another, that very easily could have been a turnover. But these guys have played together in club, they've played together in indoor, in recreational leagues. They know to be on the lookout for one another for quick plays like that.
And Madison draws from a few different colleges to get their talent. Is that right? It's not just the Madison University of Wisconsin pool.
You're right. There are quite a few colleges in Wisconsin that the Madison Radicals pull from. There's Whitewater, UW Stevens Point, all colleges with great ultimate programs, which is why from wherever they pull, they get very good players.
And a big layout D there by Shrywise on the underneath. What an incredible bid. I didn't think he was going to get it, Megan.
Neither did I, but he is an incredibly quick player. 6'2", 185 pounds, 26 years old. One of the few non-Wisconsin players on that team. He went to Kansas State.
And a call there. Looked like a quick turnover. Minnesota took over on possession, and then a timeout was called. So we are going to, remember in the AUDL you get to substitute players. So you can switch your O-line with your D-line. You can bring in guys who aren't as tired. You can do whatever you want. So we'll see if maybe there was a substitution that Minnesota wanted to make, and that's why they called the timeout. And here's that incredible bid by Shrywise. Full extension, James Ferran, shocked to see the disc going away from him. It's gone towards him so many times.
I really think this is a fun addition to the AUDL, the ability to sub players. It's going to help open up teams to create more specialized players, and watching Ultimate develop through the AUDL is one of the things I'm most interested to see. In addition to the different athletic abilities players need to perform in just one game a day as opposed to tournament style, and then adjusting to new rules like substitutions during timeouts, I think we're just going to see some really, really interesting player and team development.
I lied to you, we didn't have the disc.
And so Madison with the disc, and the shot to the end zone here. And misplayed, but there was some contact off the backside there. Number 10, Dave Schleicher, went up in a crowd and was not able to pull it in. Looks like he's okay, though.
Destroyer. And when I say we, I mean me. I just made it up tonight. I believe that's his third G of the game.
So it's tied up at 8. Minnesota taps it in, and they are already looking downfield, and Yacht is open deep against what looks to be another crafty zone for Madison. And a great play in the air there. Looked like it was going to be Deed on a floaty backhand, but number 21, EJ, once again, goes up and makes the play. And number 16, Strings with the disc. Strings was a very exciting player last year. And a shot to the end zone to number 4. Who else? It's Big Ben Yacht with a goal.
To the Yacht Club, back again. Ben Yacht just tearing it up tonight. Goal after goal. He's unstoppable. Give him a round of applause.
So it looks like Yacht's winning the battle of the tall guys.
With 6 minutes to go.
I believe this is point 2 for him.
Come on, everybody. Make some noise. Follow that flag guy. I don't know who he is. He's not affiliated with us, but that's okay.
The Minnesota Windchill handlers are doing a very good job today of tiring the Madison Radical defense, pulling it wide, moving it quickly, then finding a quick space to move the disc through. The Radicals are having a harder time adjusting quickly and are not quite able to catch up with the disc as soon as the Windchill break through their zone at least once.
And here's Madison looking to center the disc here against some good pressure from Minnesota. And I think you're right. You said this might be the first time we've seen Madison look really rattled within their division. Last year they seemed so calm even in close games. And they just look a little out of sorts tonight.
A few drops, a few misreads, rather uncharacteristic for this team.
And Shrywise gets him back on track with an easy goal, a nice inside backhand. I believe that was Dave Wiseman playing that angle. That's such a tough angle to hit, but he seems to do it very easily.
A lot of the Madison Radical players have throws like that where you think they have no business making it to the corner that they do, but they're able to bend the disc in pretty cool ways. Yeah, that was a great put.
Almost an Andrew Brown-esque backhand there. And if you're the Minnesota wind chill defender there, you got to just scratch your head and say, I'm in the right position. How in the world did that throw get off? And really, the mark wasn't out of position. Just a great throw. So some quick pressure, nearly a D there. Andrew Meshnick really playing heads-up D here, and they've got Meshnick and Weber around the disc. I remember those were the two guys anchoring the zone last year that was so effective. And a backhand across the field. That's going to work. And here we've seen Sealer. He loves that hammer, and he drops it in over the top. So a couple great throws over the top, and Minnesota shreds the Madison zone.
Something else to point out about what the Minnesota wind chill are doing, when they break through the zone, there are looks on either side of the field. So not only are the Madison Radicals having a difficult time catching up, even if they were a little more heads up, they would physically have a very difficult time. You see, we go from one side of the field to the other in 2 throws. That's very hard to do, especially when you have numbers to the advantage of the Minnesota wind chill halfway up the field.
It's really true, and when they're throwing these really precise upside downs, EJ and Seiler just drop them right in there. It's almost like as a defender, there's nothing to do. So Minnesota looks very poised. They've taken a lead in front of their home crowd. They're up 10-9 against the defending division champs. And the steady hands of Andrew Brown on the disc can't hurt. He's a veteran. Played his college ball at Madison and then went out to Vancouver and played on Furious George, one of the top programs in the past 10 years for sure. And nice movement on offense from Madison, and a big foul was not called. And Madison just kind of getting what they want, it looks like. And the step around, break back in, and a big gratuitous bid. And Schleicher unable to make the catch. I think he's a little embarrassed that he didn't pull it in. He was thinking Sports Center.
That would have made a good one.
So right into the double team, looking for the hammer over the top, and he will throw it. So once again, that hammer opens up the field for Minnesota. And some really creative throwing by Minnesota. Blades, little scoobers and scooters over the top, hammers. And the weather really isn't too bad tonight. So a lot of those throws that may not work in a stiff breeze, like that one right there, will just drop right in for you.
Here are the hammer throws you were hoping for at the beginning of the game, Chuck.
I am a huge fan of the hammer. And there's a hammer. All the way to the far side of the field. So Minnesota seems to have found the kryptonite here. And they are marching down the field. They are within a couple yards of the end zone. Let's see if they can punch it in. And they do with a nice step inside forehand. That's John Gaynor threading the needle to number 10, Jay Drescher.
I'm kind of surprised that the Radicals keep throwing the zone in this situation. Maybe we will see more man defense after this. You said it best. Upside down throws seem to be the kryptonite to the Madison Radical defense, and the conditions are just right for the wind chill to be able to throw those dependably. We'll see how the Madison Radicals choose to answer back.
So what do you think would be the ideal condition for Madison's zone? This is a pretty calm night, not a lot of wind, not really too many variables. What would be perfect for them to run their zone?
Against the Minnesota wind chill in particular?
Yeah.
I'd say light rain and gusty wind.
Light rain and gusty wind. You'd think with the winter we've had that would be the best we could hope for, especially with, you said, snow on the ground last week.
Yeah.
But just a beautiful night. And the big backhand huck to the end zone. Looks like Swain's in pursuit, and that might be a field goal, but no, it's a regular goal for Mike Swain. The PA just gave Mike Swain some grief for having skinny legs, but he made that one look real easy. Nice, great deep cut, and pulls it in.
Yeah, Mike Swain is a very athletic guy. I had a talk with him earlier this week, and his legs did come into the conversation. He said he worked very hard on his strength this off season, put on some weight. Still was not able to put some weight on the legs, though.
Interesting. He looks like Maurice Claret in a combine. I wouldn't worry about it. So Brian Hart with that big outside in back into the end zone, and he knew who he was throwing to, apparently. Great defensive pursuit, however. So Madison hits back. They are 10-11 against Minnesota, and we are coming in on the end of the first half here. And I'm noticing the tempo picking up a little bit. The cuts seem a little harder. Looks like the focus is a little sharper.
I agree, Chuck. I feel like both teams continuously raise the stakes.
And how often do these guys play against each other? I mean, they're relatively close, I suppose. Deep shot there to the end zone. And that will work. So Minnesota punches right back. Dan Miller with the goal from Kevin Seiler.
Miller, who used to actually go to the University of Madison. So he's saying, hey, fellas, I switched sides back to the good team. So that's a goal. Everybody, we are up by 2. I think the cheering helps. So why don't you make some noise?
And here we see Seiler with the disc. So calm and patient, whips it to the end zone here. And Minnesota looks very confident.
One thing that stymied, I think, a lot of the Midwest and the Eastern teams was just, as you mentioned, the long, arduous winter. There were not a lot of practices that occurred outside before the regular season started. I think the Minnesota Wind Chill said they had maybe 1 or 2. The Madison Radicals started practice very early. They started practicing on February 20th. However, they were practicing indoors during that time. So we're watching the Minnesota Wind Chill get comfortable outside pretty much for the first time this season.
He's a traitor, a red coat. Turncoat.
And Andrew Brown facing some very good pressure and a nifty little upline from Nate Volkman. And a deep shot to the end zone here. Looks like Andrew Brown looking to go up and unable to bring it in. And that was Tom Annan just taking a shot at the end zone there. Normally Tom Annan would be throwing a swing pass to Andrew Brown, but this time he threw a blade to Andrew Brown in the end zone.
I think the hot pursuit from Kyle Gill made him misread that disc a little bit. We see him here jumping uncharacteristically early, just a few steps backwards, and that disc would have been his.
Sometimes those early jumps force the receiver to make a decision. I think that's what happened. Andrew Brown went up just because the defender went up.
And recognizing that it was Kyle Gill, a very athletic individual, I'm sure he respected the pursuit of Kyle Gill and made as quick of a bid as he could.
I think you're right. So it is 12-10, Minnesota with the lead in front of their home crowd and their home opener. And Madison is looking to narrow that gap. We see Tim DeBile there talking to his troops. Owner and coach of the Madison Radicals. And we will see what Madison comes up with. They are trailing uncharacteristically to one of their interdivisional rivals here, intra-divisional rivals, I should say. So Meeson will check it in. And a very closely contested catch on the upline there. Austin Lean pulls it in. And a miscue there on the reset. So Madison has a chance to pull within one. And Mike Swain finds the opening for the goal. So nifty little shovel pass, and Madison is back within one.
Brian actually has a big heart. He's an all-right guy. I'll give him credit. For the goal, 48 seconds left in the half.
I chatted with Lou Abramowski earlier this week, and he talked about, we're seeing that score by the Madison Radicals again. Mike Swain keeping it very calm, working at the upper right corner of the end zone there. Tight spot, but he was able to put it into Brian Hart. Lou was mentioning that when he was asked to be coach this year, he said he would go in if it was absolutely clear to the Minnesota Wind Chill that their goal this year would be to win it all. And I think that that's great to come in with a very declarative statement like that, saying, I will put my effort into this if we all put our effort into this. And if Minnesota takes this game, it's certainly going to change the geography of the Midwest Division, adding a new contender to the field, which would be very exciting for the AUDL, very exciting for the Midwest Division, but also exciting for the Minnesota program at large. I know that with Lou coming in, a lot of players were suddenly interested in playing for the Minnesota Wind Chill. That kind of buy-in is going to be huge for this city.
And Lou Abramowski, a longtime player in the Twin Cities area, is that right?
Yes, Chuck, that is very right. For the last 15 years, he has played for a different club team every single year. Has not played for the same club team 2 years in a row, and he has only played for the same club team twice. So let that marinate. Think about what that means.
That's kind of incredible.
I think we're probably all connected to Lou in some way, shape, or form. We've either played against him or with him.
I think you're right. 6 degrees of Lou.
Right, 6 degrees of Lou.
That could be a fun game. That's interesting that he would want a lot of commitment from his players when clearly he has no commitment to his club team. We're just having some fun with Lou, though.
Lou's a nice guy. I'm sure he won't mind.
So the immediate double team, and Minnesota gets it through right away, and they've opened the field up again. Minnesota seems to have figured out how to just disarm this defense, and Seiler with the disc, cocking the hammer, and they get it around. So again, Meshnick and Weber around the disc for Madison. And Minnesota facing some pretty good pressure. It seems like when they don't go over the top, they really do struggle with some of these longer armed marks. And a nice step around break for the goal. That's number 14, Austin Lean, a standout from the University of Illinois with the goal.
So I watched the Minnesota Wind Chill play against the Chicago Wildfire a couple of weeks ago at the Wildfire home opener, and one thing I was noticing, we saw very dependable Sterin and Lean handle the disc often. So often, in fact, Sterin has, before the start of this game, he had 87 throws under his belt, and Austin Lean had 71. That's almost 2-3 times as many as their teammates. So they are clearly the ones who are going to be dictating this offense time and time again. And they were doing exactly what we're seeing tonight, which is setting the tone for their offense. But what was happening with the Minnesota Wind Chill is that they seem to be having trouble stretching the field, communicating who is supposed to be cutting in. We are seeing a drastically different team tonight. And with the throws we're seeing from the Minnesota Wind Chill going over the cup and downfield, people setting up it appropriately, cutting off of one another, they are almost unstoppable.
It certainly looks that way, and Tim DeBile for Madison burns a timeout, wants to talk to his troops here before the pull. So with just 10 seconds left, I'm sure Tim DeBile is drawing up a quick play to get a look at the end zone, and I think this is the upwind direction. So not as easy to just do a centering pass and a bomb to the end zone here. So if you're Tim DeBile, what are you thinking here?
With 10 seconds left, you are going to have to get a couple of passes off. With Scott Riggles being played so well by Ben Yacht, he would be my first look, but I think you're going to have to give the offense a couple of people downfield. So maybe a decoy cut or maybe 2 cuts going deep.
Yeah, certainly sounds like a good idea. They're going to be looking for probably that immediate look deep. So we'll see what Madison comes up with. Again, the clock doesn't start until the first throw. So it's a little more time than you might think.
Here we go. There's Johnson with the pull. 10 seconds to go. Come on, everybody.
So a rolling pull is fielded and centered to Tom Annan. And a nice mark. Tom Annan with a scuba over the top, and looks like they're going to run out of time as Riggles takes a shot, but it is after time expires.
Let's take a look at that one more time. For an upwind throw, that was quite a zinger.
Agreed.
Now head on over to the concession stand. We've got Chopper's Pizza. Head on over to
So Scott Riggles lets one go to the end zone here. Didn't matter, but the D just in case. And Minnesota has put their stamp on the game so far as we get to the end of the first half. They are up 13-11 here on the AUDL on ESPN.
is back this year. Bit to Peace is a local fundraiser for Ultimate Peace, an awesome international organization that teaches kids in conflict the spirit of our awesome sport.
I missed my graduation, practice, sleep so we could drill. I missed anniversary, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Saturday. I missed my final exam. I missed some plane flight. I even missed my parents' anniversary. I missed a lot.
He's coming down the ice. He's coming around the net. Centering pass. Oh, look at this. A break for Canada. He shoots. He scores. Canada wins in overtime. Canada back on top of the world.
I missed my graduation, practice, sleep so we could drill. I missed anniversary, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Saturday. I missed my final exam. I missed some plane flight. I even
So I'll ask you about and welcome back to St. Paul, Minnesota, where Minnesota is winning the game. They're up 2 again in front of their home crowd, and Madison, the defending division champs, is scrambling a little bit. Megan, what do you think Madison has to do to get back in this game?
I think they're going to have to switch to man D. Something you said earlier that really made sense was when the Madison Radicals were doing man defense, it seemed to stymie the Windchill offense a little bit. It gives the Madison Radicals a much better chance of defending their players in the end zone when they're man-to-man. When they've done their zone defense with a few upside-down throws, the Minnesota Windchill has just absolutely shredded it.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, having covered these teams last year, Madison experienced a lot of success with that zone, but not tonight. The over-the-tops really have made the difference, I think.
With the players that the Minnesota Windchill has, with the experience on the disc, I'm not surprised that they have the throws to beat the zone.
So we are back to live action here. And nice big pull there by Minnesota, and we are under the lights here. It's Friday Night Lights in St. Paul, and a huge bit underneath. Catch is made, however. And Madison looking to get on the board here in the second half. Andrew Brown on the disc. So good pressure so far. Another great low backhand by Andrew Brown. And he steps around, delivers to Scott Riggles, who is almost tackled. And that'll be 10 yards, and a stern look from Scott Riggles as well. So Yacht and Riggles are doing battle tonight. Maybe the two tallest guys on the field. Riggles now with the disc.
Perhaps even the 2 tallest guys in the AUDL.
It's possible. You think of the guys who are best up high, and it's guys like Bo Kittredge and Ashlyn Joy, Mark Lloyd, but they're not actually that tall. They're just great in the air. Here's Scott Riggles looking to the end zone, and a great layup by number 10, but he's unable to catch it. And that was Dave Schleicher once again going horizontal. Tough break for Schleicher.
The Minnesota Windchill guys are running at the same speed they were at the very beginning of the game. They are looking like they are in great shape, especially great defensive shape.
Yeah, and it does seem like the best athletes, at least from a speed perspective, tend to be defensive players. And we are seeing Minnesota, like you said, keeping the speed up, keeping the intensity up in front of their home crowd. And Madison switching to a man like you had hoped for, showing good pressure as well. And a scuba over the top. Minnesota loves their over the tops. The swing around to Yacht. And he hits Strings, who was one of the stars of the Minnesota Windchill last year. Very good in the air, very athletic, number 16. So nice pressure, and the throw up high gets away from the receiver. And Madison's man D was up to the task. They forced the turnover, and here we see Annan swinging the disc. And the big wind and delivery, a little bit low, but Riggles able to corral the disc. And now, dealing with the double team, goes right over the top. And nice flow here from Madison. They got a shot at a goal, and they capitalize. That's number 28.
What number are you? Turn your back.
Or is it 29?
Well, Madison scored anyway, 13-12.
Nate Thibodeau.
By Peter Graffy. I think he weighs about 120 pounds.
Nate Thibodeau is 35 years old. He also comes from UW-Stevens Point, has played for the Madison Club for a number of years. He is 5'10", 150 pounds, is known for his full extension layout grabs, but also his wily handling abilities and his full field hammers. So hopefully there's a nice easy forehand throw, beautifully shaped around the Minnesota Windchill defenders to number 26, my rookie of choice, Peter Graffey.
And Graffey, you said, is one of the stats leaders on Madison, despite the fact that he's a rookie and is one of the younger guys.
And a pull by Madison there. Floating in the air.
So, Megan, have you ever played under the lights?
No, Chuck, I have not. Have you ever played under the lights?
I have a couple times. It's a little different. It's harder to see the disc, and I'm wondering how it'll affect play here. So Seiler winds and delivers. Looked like Swain was baiting the deep shot, and Haran all alone will catch the goal. Possibly a blown assignment, but in any event, Haran back in the end zone where he belongs.
Yeah, tonight, every time the Madison Radicals have gone off of man D, it's almost as though the Minnesota Wind Chill go into stealth mode. We're finding Minnesota Wind Chill players all alone in the end zone. There was no one even close to challenging that throw.
Looked like a miscue possibly between Mike Swain and Daniel Rowan. They were kind of both looking at each other like, hey, are you going to get him? Are you going to get him? Nobody's going to get him.
Here we go. Make some noise. Let's get this defense going. Let's get them a break.
In a tight game like this, at the very end, if you lose the game, you look back at points like that and realize how very important it is to make sure you know exactly who you're guarding.
It's a great point, and a break by Andrew Brown. And stall count gets high. The throw is completed. Great cutting by Pat Schreiwise. Seems to always be open downfield when they need him. And the swing to the middle of the field to Tom Annan, the animal. He looks for the break, not there, settles for the forehand. And so far, pretty steady handling by this core of Madison that led them all the way to the finals last year. And a throw gets up, and it is D. Great pressure, and it looks like there may be a foul. Not sure if it was on the catch or on the throw. Looks like it was on the throw. And Josh Hemish contests. But unfortunately, this is not club. So the disc stays with Madison, and it is a goal. Nice break there for Madison.
I'm not sure who scored. Probably have a number on the front as well. It's making it difficult for me. Anyway, 14-13.
And there's Nate Thibodeau, the wily veteran, with the goal.
Here we go on offense.
Here we see that throw again. Great inside forehand put. Made it very easy for Nate Thibodeau to come across, grab that. Being able to throw break throws in the AUDL is absolutely essential. If you want to be able to maneuver easily around defense, those are the kind of throws you're going to have to be able to throw.
Here comes the pull from Madison. It's a beautiful night here, isn't it? We should be happy.
And Minnesota up 14-13. And looks like another zone. Big bid on the defense. But Minnesota maintains possession. They are moving backwards. And looks like they've opened up the field. Number 88 is streaking deep. That's Pat Jensen working the deep game for Minnesota right now. Patient offense for Minnesota against what's looking to be a little more intense zone defense. But no problem at all. The backhand around for the goal to Pat Jensen.
Much better adjustment from the Madison Radicals. If we watch the end of that point again, you'll notice there were more Radicals in the appropriate area. Still not quite tight enough for them to prevent that score. There we see quite a bit of white in the end zone. Maybe not as close as I remember. All the same, it's understandable that the Radicals would want to take early games like this to continue to work their zone, especially against a team like the Minnesota Wind Chill. So I certainly don't fault them for trying to, instead of saying, throw their hands up. Okay, it didn't work. Let's go to man defense. What exactly isn't working? What exactly in this zone defense is not working? What can we improve upon? It's great practice early in the season.
That's true. It is a long season, and we're still in week 3 here in the AUDL. So certainly a lot of these coaches are going to try different sets, different combinations of players, and different defenses just to see what works. And so far, Minnesota's had the answer for the Madison zone. So a backhand force and a quick dish up line to Tom Annan. Seems like Madison has no problem at all with that backhand force for Minnesota. And Andrew Brown barely able to keep his footing and finishes with the spike.
You know, Andrew, your cat Artemis.
So impressed with the Minnesota wind chill defense right now. They are there step for step with the Madison Radicals,
15-14, wind chill still on top.
challenging every throw and every catch.
You can see the wind chill defender contesting that he was pushing off with his forearm. But Madison, or Andrew Brown rather, the veteran, gets away with a little bit of a, maybe a little bit of a nudge there.
I was talking with Alex Baker from the Minnesota Wind Chill. He is not suited up tonight. He is he's a dragon thrust player. He was saying that he's surprised at how the game has continued to not be particularly physical, even with the addition of referees. But I do think this game seems to be, the contact is coming just a little more frequently.
Yeah, definitely been a healthy debate among the Ultimate community to see if spirit of the game will go out the window with referees or not. And for the most part, it seems like it's alive and well here in the AUDL games. Guys still basically keeping the focus on fair play. And call on the field. And that might have been a stall. So a turnover. Madison's on the disc. And with 6 minutes, 40 seconds left, Madison looking to even the game at 15 here against Minnesota in their home opener. And a big shot to the end zone, and the receiver had just turned to come under.
That was a very surprising miscommunication from a team like the Madison Radicals, who these players have played together for so long.
And Wiseman had just got open deep and had turned to bring it back under. And right when he did that, we see the big backhand of the end zone. Based on what we saw from Wiseman in the air last year, I can understand why a thrower would want to get it up in the air when he's deep. He came down with a lot. But to no avail here, Minnesota with the disc, Haran centering it. And not a lot happening downfield. Looks like pretty good D. And there's a nice high release flick to get to Haran, who steps inside and airs it out. And a great run deep there by number 6. That's Dan Miller getting open and closing out on that disc.
And grabs that goal. Oh, you can do a little chopping for that one. James just chopped the little tree down.
Dan Miller is another sub-zero guy. He is 30 years old. But don't let his age fool you. He's still fast enough to sprint down the field, pull in the disc.
And I just drank an entire Red Bull very quickly. It's not good.
So Minnesota showing a lot of heart here in front of their home crowd. And you can see pretty good crowd has turned out. They trickled in as the first half.
Yeah, the community here in Minnesota is incredibly supportive. The Ultimate is the fastest growing sport here in Minnesota. There are a growing number of high schools that have competitive Ultimate teams, which is another exciting move for the sport, continuing to be ever present with younger and younger players.
It's true. In years past, the only folks that really played, especially club, were college educated, because that was the only place you could learn to play. And it's really changed in the past 15, 20 years where guys are, you know, some kids grew up playing, some kids had parents who played. You know, we talked about Ashlyn Joy for San Jose Spiders, grew up on the sidelines watching his dad play. And now he's one of the elite stars in the AUDL. So a foul, and the disc comes back in. Scott Riggles gets open underneath. And he looks around with that lefty flick. And Tom Annan with the throw and go, well defended. Still, however, released up the line. Man, Annan and Brown are fun to watch, aren't they?
They work so well together. They did last year, and it's fun to watch them continue to coalesce. But what I find interesting about the two of them is they're not strictly backhandlers. You'll see them running down the line as Tom Annan did just there, attempting to catch the disc.
And a great D there. A great poach D coming off the backside, gets up high for that D. That's number 10, Jay Drescher. He has been a factor, especially on defense tonight.
Yeah, both teams are doing a great job of getting in and taking the disc down for their team. I'd say this is one of the more exciting defensive games I've seen played in a while.
I think you're right. Both teams are amped up. It's a divisional rivalry. These guys have played club and college against each other undoubtedly, and neither of these teams wants to give. So, Megan, we saw there a help defender coming in to make the play. How do you think guys get good at making those help defensive plays? It seems like certain players just have a nose for the disc.
I think it comes down to mental fortitude, to be perfectly honest. You have to be willing to put it out on the line, knowing that it's not your responsibility to be there, and owning up to the team effort as opposed to what you as an individual are supposed to be doing. That's something that's a little more innate. Of course, it can be learned, but I always think that the really passionate players are the ones who are going to be in there, as you said, backup players or getting help Ds for the team.
Jay Drescher certainly seems to fit the bill in that regard.
There we go.
Plays with a lot of passion, really helps out his teammates. And great pressure so far. Minnesota barely able to get it. Actually, they're still in their end zone here. And remember, the end zones are marked by those pylons. So it's played on a football field. However, the end zones start where the pylon is, not where the goal line is. So still more pressure, still in their end zone, and a big layout. And Madison lets go of the disc. Looks like a foul was called, 10-yard penalty, and a double team right away. Minnesota up against some serious pressure from Madison, but it looks like they just broke it open. And a shot to the end zone. Number 88 is open again, Pat Jensen, and he goes up and gets D'd.
And we don't have a call there, no.
So a clean play in the air, says the ref, and a very exciting play up high.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that one again at the end of the point.
And here we see Meshnick. And a
And
timeout is called.
By the Radicals, so we'll watch that. We'll watch that big D again.
Looked like Daniel Rowan got up real high on that disc and somehow picked it clean. Here we see the replay.
Glad no one was hurt on that throw, but that was nice, tight, intense defense. Number 23, Daniel Rowan. He is a newbie to the Madison Radicals this year, also a UW-Stevens Point individual, 23 years old. He is 6'2" and 215.
Yeah, it looked like a good call by the ref. I don't think he hit him down low. I thought maybe there would be some contact in the lower body, but it looked like he made a heck of a play to get up high and pick it clean. And now Nate Volkman getting set to pick up the disc for Madison. And a very active mark. Little lefty backhand flick out to space there. And Wiseman with the disc, winds and delivers a deep shot. Defenders in the area. And a heck of a play up high for Madison.
Wow. I'd run out on the field for that one too.
Thomas Coolidge there with the catch. Very athletic play. Great in traffic catch.
Yeah, he's another youngster who went to Wisconsin. He's 23 years old, plays for the Madison club. He's only 5'8", but what a grab.
Goes up against Drescher and pulls it down. You know, we saw Coolidge last year make play after play like this.
Yeah.
He just seems to be one of those guys. He's more hungry for the disc than anyone else. And he's so young and athletic still that he's able to go up and get it in traffic.
Although consistently we've seen 2 Minnesota Winchell defending in the end zone against the 1 Madison Radical. Great play by Coolidge there to catch that disc. But even better defense from the Minnesota Winchell that they are there time and time again.
It's true. It is a little bit of a numbers game. If you're in the right place with defensive pressure, tends to work out for you in the end. And a nifty little throw-up line to set up this blade to the end zone. So some very precise throwing by the Minnesota Winchell, and Dan Miller threads the needle for the goal.
Nice little throw by Dan Miller. I believe that was Daniel Meeson there with a nice little blade grab.
The Winchell are being absolutely fearless with the throws they're putting up in the air tonight.
It's true. They're going over the top a lot. They're doing some creative shapes with their throws, these outside ins, these little, you know, this blade down the line. Not an easy throw, but obviously it's something they do well, and they know they do it well. And here we see EJ with the pull. And Madison trailing by 2 with the disc. And a nice catch down low. And another catch down low. Looks like that one hit the turf, however. That's a turnover, and Minnesota looking to punch this in and go up 3. And the double team by Madison. Foul is called. And he is going to center the disc, it looks like.
Oh, but didn't pin, so Michael gets to advance it to the center of the field.
So quick check in and a throw to the end zone, which is down. So a couple turf discs here in the past minute or so. And Tom Annan's got the disc, and he's going to crank it deep. Scott Riggles looks like he may have it. And a big layout catch by Scott Riggles. And he steps inside for that patented lefty flick, and he is fired up.
During the halftime, I was saying there have not been nearly enough layouts, so I really appreciate Scott Riggles delivering on what I felt this game was missing.
The big fella gets out there. He's 6'7", and one of the fastest full field sprints on the Madison Radicals.
Absolutely. I think there's a little bit of debate on the Madison Radicals as to who's faster, Mike Swain or Scott Riggles. They have not tested it, so both hold bragging rights. But right now, Scott Riggles has all the bragging rights on the Madison Radicals.
And what a throw by Tom Annan. Just lays it out there. The flick doesn't turn over, keeps it nice and flat for Riggles to run onto it.
Riggles, interestingly, has not played competitive ultimate since 2008. He stopped playing for Madison Club when the AUDL came together, and he found out that there was going to be a team in Madison. The commitment level was at just the right amount, and he was able to play for the Madison Radicals, so it's good to see him out on the field in a highly competitive game again.
Absolutely, and a big bit underneath there by Wiseman. And Haran threads the needle up line. Heck of a catch, and that will be a goal. Number 7 for Minnesota. Dan Meeson goes up and gets it.
Up the line for a goal. That puts your Winchell back up by 2, 18-16. The assist from the Lumberjack. Somebody just give him a plaid shirt, please. Just throw one on him. I know some of you hipsters in the crowd have a plaid red shirt. Just put it on him. He needs one. Music.
Very athletic play up high there.
And a high five between Brian Hart and Dan Meeson after this play.
And just an awesome bid there by number 13 on Madison. That's Brian Hart just putting his body on the line there. And you can see the passion, the commitment from these players by the way they just throw their bodies around. They make it look easy, but as someone who's done it before, that does not feel good.
Yeah, Brian Hart is 22 years old, graduate of Wisconsin. And I said it before, the Madison Radicals, the perfect mix between wily veterans and young, very athletic, hungry players.
It's a great point. And Andrew Brown, I wonder why they force Andrew Brown backhand. Maybe it's because Tom Annan's a little better on the flick, but look at this backhand from Annan. Inadvertently macked for the goal.
And he spikes it even though he almost dropped it. Hey, you know,
and Madison making it look easy deep.
Kudos to Coolidge for keeping his cool. So there we see the swarm of the wind chill.
So a very opportunistic near drop there by Coolidge. Does a little barrel roll off the chest into the end zone. And Tom Annan apparently has a cannon from both sides.
If you think Animal is good at Ultimate, Chuck, I should mention that he played indoor soccer during the off-season with a few of his radical teammates. And they placed second in the league.
Second in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 second-place finishes in a row for Tom Annan. That's got to get old.
I was looking at the glass half full, Chuck.
That would be a brick.
I am an eternal pessimist. And the double team once again for Madison. They swing around, and Minnesota still holding on to a 1-point lead. But Madison is coming on. Nice offensive flow right now for Minnesota. And they are right outside the end zone. Scuba over the top. Nearly D'd, but handled and thrown in for the goal to Pat Jensen. Minnesota holds in for another goal.
That is Pat. Paco, Peanuts, Montgomery, that's his real middle name. Jensen, come on, make some noise, everybody. Your wind chill up 1917.
So a nifty scuba over the top there from EJ. Sets up the easy dish to Pat Jensen for the goal, and Minnesota looks very confident.
Yeah, Pat Jensen is another sub-zero player. The speed of this game has picked up. The speed of the offense has definitely picked up. For various reasons, a lot of people argue that the offense has the advantage in the AUDL. With the wider field, there's a greater range for throwing break throws, just moving the disc easily. But both teams have really picked up defensively, and their offense has continued to answer back.
It's a good point, and a backhand roller goes under the bleachers. So the referee will bring a new disc into play. So Tom Annan against the sideline with 1 second left. And he calls a timeout, it looks like. So Tom Annan trying to think, is there any way we can get a look at the end zone here with 1 second left, trailing by 2 to the Minnesota wind chill.
There's definitely a learning process to using these timeouts strategically.
My cell phone, so I missed what happened, but yeah, I think we have the disc, right? Cheers if we have the Frisbee. Do we have the Frisbee?
So as we near the end of the third quarter here, Minnesota up 2. The pressure has definitely been turned up by Madison, but Minnesota has just been tit for tat. It looks like they're very confident. They're still holding on to the lead here.
Get some pizza, buy one of those jerseys, buy me one of those jerseys, because those are awesome.
I missed my graduation. Practice to sleep so we could drill. I missed anniversary and Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, I missed the final exam. I missed the point play. I even missed my parents' anniversary. I missed a lot.
He's coming down the ice. He's coming around the net. Centering pass. Oh, look at this. A break for Canada. He shoots. He scores. Canada wins in overtime. Canada back on top of the world.
I missed my graduation. Practice to sleep so we could drill. I missed anniversary and Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day. I missed the final exam. I missed the point play. I even missed my parents' anniversary. I missed a lot.
And welcome back to the AUDL on ESPN.
It's the fourth quarter home opener.
And Minnesota has a 2-point lead. I think the clock is incorrect. And we are at the beginning of the fourth and final frame here. Scuba over the top, handled by Minnesota. And Madison coming with a man D, which is what you thought might help them against these able throwers of Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that the Madison Radicals have just not been able to contain the throwing power of the Minnesota wind chill, and furthermore, the downfielders have been crafty at positioning themselves appropriately. And so once one or two break throws get off or over-the-top throws get off, there's been a wind chill, sometimes even all alone in the end zone.
And a call on the field.
Dan Miller is going to take an injury sub right now.
Dan Miller of Minnesota is going to come out with an injury. Not sure what happened, but he's walking off the field, so hopefully nothing too serious.
Coming in here is Pat Niles. We have John Stern with the disc. Dave Wiseman on the mark. Married to the famous
And Tim DeBile out on the field, coach of the Radicals, protesting something probably related to the clock. I think there was a slight miscue.
And he also took Coolidge out and put in place Andrew Meshnick.
Meshnick in, number 2 for the Radicals. And Minnesota looking to score here and go up 3. A nice dish pass and then a quick continuation to the end zone. Minnesota looks so sharp on offense right now.
Those are the surgeons right there. They just cut him up and took up that ball of the ladder and threw it away. That is a goal, baby. Get excited. Let's play some music.
This game is very tight, very fun to watch. I have a feeling if the Madison Radicals are not able to come back, they're going to take a look at this game afterwards and think, how could we have prevented this? And the points that the Windshield scored, completely uncontested, those are the points they simply cannot allow, especially in tight games like this.
It's a great point. It does look like Madison's just having a couple mental lapses. They're not in the right position, maybe losing some focus. Maybe it was the trip up here. But in any event, you're defending division champs. You can see some heads hanging on the sideline, and they're starting to wonder if they're going to be able to come back and snag the victory here in Minnesota. So Tom Enter on the disc will center to Andrew Brown.
We need a break. We need the defense to put a goal in. They need your help.
And a nice mark prevents that backhand that Andrew usually gets anytime he wants.
Defense. Defense. Defense.
And a throw around to Andrew Brown with pressure.
Defense. Defense.
And looks like Drescher goes down, looks like a cramp in his left calf. So he's going to come off the field. As you get into the later frames here, it's not uncommon for guys. It becomes harder and harder to stay hydrated, and a lot of times the muscles start to cramp up on you. I think that's what happened with Drescher.
Especially because I imagine as the sun has gone down, the weather has probably started to chill a bit as well. In the press box, we're protected from actually feeling.
And
wow,
a
that's
huge layout
great
D
D
there. Minnesota comes through in the clutch. And Matt Young lays out, gets his right hand on the disc and knocks it down. Let's see if Minnesota can punch it in. The lefty around flick is no good. It is picked off by Tom Annan. And Schreiwise with the little lefty dish to Tom, who airs it out deep. And a great D in traffic there. Hankey goes up big and is able to get the D against Schreiwise. Or excuse me, that's Dave Schleicher.
Contact is called on that play. We'll have to see that one again. I thought it was clean, but I trust the refs.
We have the disc coming all the way back over here by me, in front of me on the sideline, due to an injury.
Oh.
So we can see Schreiwise with the dish, and it sounds like there may have been an injury. So much like in club, when there's an injury, they stop continuation. And is the concern there that if somebody's injured and down on the field, it's safer for them if play stops? Is that your understanding of that rule?
The referees are going to talk about this a little bit and figure it out.
I think so, and I think anytime there's a unfair stoppage of play, figure the disc ought to go back to where it occurred.
It looks like 9:45 is going to be put back on the clock here. So we'll see what happens out of the break here. But a pretty exciting deep shot.
Ladies, stand up. I don't think you will, because you haven't listened to me all night.
Here we see that layout D from Matt Young earlier in the point, and the deep shot that ends up not counting. But we can see there, wasn't clear if he made contact down low or not. But Schleicher.
I think we'll see it here from a different camera angle. And here comes that throw. Beautiful put by Tom Annan. It's anyone's call.
So Schleicher will have the disc in his hand on the goal line. And he looks for that backhand break and will get it to big Scott Riggles. So Madison pulls back within 2.
There is enough time left in this game, and Madison certainly has the talent to take it back. However, the Minnesota wind chill, as I mentioned earlier, are contesting absolutely every single throw. Nothing is coming easily for the Madison Radicals as this game has progressed.
So here's the backhand break around to Scott Riggles. Well done by Schleicher. And Madison looking to pull and run down and get the D here. Peter Graffey with the pull and the snazzy orange cleats. We always appreciate up in the booth when these guys wear colorful cleats because we can't always see the numbers on their jerseys. And good pressure here from Madison. A nice little upline look and a flick huck towards the end zone. Couple defenders in the area. And who else but Peter Graffey goes up and gets the D. Great help off the backside by Graffey. It's what we talked about earlier. He just has that triangulated position and able to make the play. And he rips a deep shot that will work. That's Mike Peterson pulling it in. Or pardon me, that's Daniel Rowan. And James Rum easily pulls that one in. And wide open deep. So Kevin Seiler, the savvy vet, sees what's happening and stands out in the open. And a silly foul there by Madison. But Kevin Seiler will advance the disc, looking for something over the top as always. And it's a point block on the hammer, something you rarely see. So a heck of a play for Madison. I think that was Andrew Meshnick.
And that's the first time we've seen an upside-down throw stopped by the Madison Radical.
You can see him just holding it there, telegraphing it, and Meshnick just jumps up and D's it. I wonder how many times that's happened. He's probably thrown that throw 10,000 times. It's happened, what, second time in his life? Here we see that great D up high by one of the new stars of the Madison Radicals, Peter Graffey. I just think that's so impressive when a guy gets a point block on a hammer.
Yeah. Especially he didn't even jump that high. He just had his hands positioned perfectly.
So here we get a look at the Madison huddle here. And the crowd is hanging tough as it gets colder. I think these are Minnesotans. They're probably used to the cold.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Probably all have a blanket packed in their car for whatever sporting event they're attending at whatever time of year.
So Madison with the disc here, trailing by 3 as the time starts to wind down and become more of an issue. Andrew Brown delivers to Schleicher. And Tom Annan rips a deep flick. Nearly deep by strings, but it gets through to Schreiweiss for the goal.
If I thought he wouldn't have breakthrows or good arounds, I would force straight up on Tom Annan every single time.
I agree. I'm starting to get a better appreciation of why they've been forcing backhand. That flick is really problematic downfield.
You'll notice he's very skilled at positioning it perfectly straight down the field. As a cutter, that's an easy read to make. You know exactly where it's going, and from any angle you can meet it.
So maybe a slight momentum swing for Madison, who desperately needs to get something going here. And a flick pulled by Wiseman. So much power on that flick from Wiseman. Pat Jensen steps inside, delivers to Hram downfield. And a tight little lane that he was trying to hit. No good. And the shot goes up deep. And almost played. Great D there by the wind chill. Looked like possibly an ill-advised throw, although there may be a call.
Just about any deep shot has been ill-advised by the Madison Radicals. And notice I did not say every throw, but just about every throw has been ill-advised. The wind chiller playing tight deep in the end zone or deep down the field.
It's really true, and even the ones that work, like you said, the defenders are in the area. Sometimes there's more than one. And no easy goals for Madison. So working it down the far sideline here are the Radicals. Coolidge really doing a lot of cutting, getting a lot of touches. And a near misplay there by number 8. Adam Drews is able to pull it in. And nice pressure downfield. Mike Swain working against Hran, unable to get separation. And a nice little push pass over the top for the goal, and the Radicals are back within 1.
Madison with a goal. That ties it up, 20-20. Now, crowd, audience, guests over there. You're still a little quiet. It's 20-20.
And there's Coolidge, worked hard that whole point, and a nice little push pass up the line from Brian Hart, his former college teammate at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Brian Hart is both a cutter and a handler for the Madison Radicals. That kind of versatility is priceless, especially when you're on the end zone like that.
And Migos, how discouraging is it when you get scored on with a push pass?
There are no words, Chuck.
There are no words. Yeah, pretty high percentage throw, but it certainly is a nonchalant delivery of the disc. And we see here the Minnesota wind chill in a huddle, arms on their shoulders, looking to rally and take control of the game. And I apologize, it's tied at 20. So Madison has come all the way back here in the 4th quarter. And like they did so many times last year, they're looking to steal a game at the end.
They have the level-headedness it takes to stay in the game. Of course, tying it up makes it easier to mentally approach the next 6 minutes. But going down 3 in the last quarter, when you've been holding a little bit tighter throughout the game, that also can shift the momentum to the other team. If the Madison Radicals refuse to give up, they fought hard. The 3 points they just scored, each one was a full team effort.
It's really true. It is a very much a team sport. There's certain aspects of the game where the skills come into play, but you really notice when you watch these teams compete that in order to win, in order to be competitive, you really need to play as a unit, and Madison and Minnesota have both done that very well tonight as Peter Graffi winds and delivers a low pull. And Minnesota looks to regain the lead here. And Hran is taken off downfield, calling for his teammates to move underneath so he can have the deep space. And great pressure right now for Madison. A difficult up the line, which is complete. But not a lot to look at for these Minnesota throwers. They're having to reset, look for these little inside breaks. And Seiler delivers it downfield to Hran, who's been moving at a different speed in this point. I think he very much wants to win this game and does not want it to slip away. So we'll see if Minnesota can punch it in.
Do you want your friends and loved ones to win?
And the bearded giant on the mark lets one up over his right shoulder.
Wind chill. Wind chill.
And EJ and the wind chill are flirting with the goal right now. And an over the top will work for EJ. A nifty throw over the top of Graffi, and that will be a goal for Minnesota.
Mr. Dan Q-Tip Miller for the goal. Putting your wind chill up 21-20.
It's really fun to see these two teams match up against one another. They're so equal in so many different skills. Being able to be there on D, the different throws we're seeing from these teams.
It's true. It's getting to be the point of the game where you know what you're going to expect from different players, and guys are getting more creative. That over-the-top backhand, just one of those split-second decisions by EJ that'll work over the top to Dan Miller. Sometimes those work, sometimes they don't. That time, Minnesota gets the goal.
We're seeing both teams work very hard to keep the other team unsettled. Neither team has shown us the same handler set, the same movement set, the same defense the entire game.
And strategic adjustments, definitely a big part of the AUDL and the challenge of coaching these teams. So Andrew Brown and this Madison Radical offense struggling to get anything going downfield. Andrew Brown goes upfield, and with the big bid, unable to pull it in. Looks like Schleicher might have been able to get it, but Andrew Brown unable to rescue that from disaster. So Strings with the disc in the middle of the field, and Minnesota with a chance to go up 2 here.
I can hear you. This is a big point.
And John Gaynor lets one hit the ground there. Matt Young unable to go down and get it, and Andrew Brown centers the discs, and number 6, that's Bill Everhart. And Thibodeau with a nice little dish to the middle of the field to Tom Annan. And he lets one go, read beautifully by number 13 on the wood chill. That's Josh Hemish with the poach D.
Like Simba or Mufasa.
So we're seeing the pressure amp up and a couple turnovers start to trickle into our game here, Megan.
Even though they're not playing like it, they have to be getting tired at this point. They have been working so hard. We've seen so few points that have just been toss, huck for a quick score.
It's a great point, and I remember when we talked to Bo Kittredge, he said that he actually gets tired in AUDL games because of the lack of breaks and the bigger field, whereas in club he almost never gets tired. Maybe that's what we're seeing. And a very difficult double team here by Madison. Minnesota forced to reset, and the hammer over the top to the end zone will work. Madison unable to contain as Minnesota goes up 2.
I've heard a number of players echo Bo's sentiment about being tired. There's so little time between points, and although each team has 28 players, only 20 can suit up for a game. I know we all know what it's like to play a game to 11, 13, 15, and have them be close. That's still not even as many points as the gentlemen we see on the field have played today. And there we watch Kyle Gill throw upside down.
Minnesota wind chill season. 22-20. 3 minutes left in the game. Your Minnesota wind chill on defense.
It's happened just a few too many times for the Madison Radicals to excuse that.
Let's make some noise.
So with 3 minutes to go here, Minnesota up 2, and Mike Peterson winds and delivers.
Defense.
And Madison with their backs against the wall. Let's see what they can come up with. Wiseman with the disc.
Defense. Defense.
And great pressure downfield right now from Minnesota. The shot goes up, and Minnesota will get the D. Mike Peterson right there. And caresses the disc down to the ground. A very gentle touch from Mike Peterson. And a difficult reset there, but it works. And the double team is getting very aggressive, and that is a foul, 10-yard penalty. So Minnesota doing the right thing, being patient, stepping through the double team, kind of like in basketball. And wow, and a great tee. Oh my goodness, and a catch by number 21, EJ. And he throws the hammer.
Are you kidding me?
And that is that. Seth Myers pulls in the goal from EJ. Just an incredible sequence.
We have to see that again. Coolidge with a fantastic D. Look at that. Eric Johnson over a Madison Radical saves that disc incredibly. keeps his cool enough to throw this hammer. Just for you, Chuck, I'm sure. I still cannot believe that he was able to save that disc.
Such a great catch from EJ. Such a great young athlete to stand out at Luther on the Next Gen Tour and rescues this disc and throws a blade for the goal. Just a beautiful throw. So with just under 2 minutes left, Minnesota is up 3, and Madison needs a goal, or it's time to head back to Madison.
Get up, come on. That was amazing. Get up, get up, get up. Let's go. Defense. Get up.
And the turnover from Madison.
Let's get pumped up.
So Minnesota steps up and forces another turnover. It looks like they've taken control here, Megan.
It certainly does. There's a minute 33 left on the clock. That's quite a bit of time. But I don't think the Madison have been scoring quickly enough to be able to put 3 in the short time remaining.
So a big bit from Schreiwise. Foul was called, and Hemish will get the disc back. He's ready to tap it in here. And it's getting more physical, more bids, more exciting plays here.
Taking our time.
You can see Minnesota has started to step through the double team of Madison, and that may be something that can lead to success later. Yacht wheels and deals it deep, and a great D from Riggles. Riggles steps right in the way.
Learning from past mistakes, you saw Riggles follow that D and make sure it didn't come down in the hands of the wind chill.
It's a great point, and the deep shot goes up. Strings is in the area, and it looks like he's going to easily catch that.
No. This is my house, baby.
So Minnesota able to take control here in front of their home crowd in the home opener against the division champ from last year. Got to be excited if you're a Minnesota wind chill fan right now.
Got to be excited if you're a Minnesota wind chill player. They have really come to life tonight.
Strings is working hard. Let's go. Come on. 15 seconds.
And this must be the kind of commitment, the kind of outcome that Lou Abramowski was hoping for when he signed on to coach the Minnesota wind chill. This is a nice notch in his
5 seconds left.
nice notch in the belt here to beat the division champs and to beat them by 3.
And to watch your star-studded roster come together and play incredibly well throughout a very long AUDL game. Some very big names on the Minnesota wind chill roster, but everyone was playing like a unit.
It's really a great point. Minnesota, you could see them coalesce throughout the game. We know that they're kind of a new combination of players, lots of talent, and you could see that as the game wore on, they just got more dialed in, more confident, and more able to just complete these difficult plays, especially on the offensive side of the disc. Really, they were in sync as the game went on.
If you're a Madison Radical player, there's a lot to take away from this game. We've seen them work together, and we've seen what works well for them. It's a great learning experience for them to see what doesn't work. They need to go back to the drawing board. How do they crispen things up? How do they improve the elements of their offense and defense that have worked incredibly well for them that last season and this season to make themselves an even more formidable force?
I think it's a great point. This is a team that's not used to having anything but success. They tend to come out with the big wins. That zone seems to always work. But tonight, Minnesota, how did they do it? How did they beat the zone?
I think we saw it early on, over the top, over the top, over the top. And the wind conditions were right for that to happen. Of course, the players who had the disc in their hand, incredibly able athletes. I don't know that I've seen so many hammers in an AUDL season, let alone a single game, but it certainly made for exciting play.
I absolutely agree. EJ was incredible with that layout and then that hammer to the end zone. Seiler with a lot of the over-the-top stuff working. Big deep shots from Tom Anna on the Madison side, and just an exciting game all around. This is going to be a great divisional rival. I'm excited to see what happens.
And I'm excited to watch the replays from this game because there certainly were a few highlights.
And I'm Chuck Town. This is Meagles. We're going to say goodnight.
He's coming down the ice. He's coming around the net. Centering pass. Oh, look at this. A break for Canada. He shoots. He scores.